This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Deadline looms for South African police to arrest former President Jacob Zuma after his sentencing to jail for contempt of court. Ever Given container ship that blocked the Suez Canal finally allowed to leave the waterway after a compensation deal was reached. And African leaders attending the CPC World Political Parties Summit thanked China for helping the continent during the COVID-19 pandemic. Hello and welcome to Africa Live, only on CGTN. I'm Mahia Mutua, live in Nairobi. Ramanyang joins me now with your business headlines.
That's right, Mahia. Here's what's coming up in the next half hour. Nigerian legislators approve a near $2.5 billion supplementary budget to pay for vaccines and further defense services. And Zimbabwe's central bank introduces into circulation its new highest denomination banknote. We'll have the details and the data on those stories and plenty more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's catch up with the latest in current affairs.
Rama, thank you. We begin in South Africa, where former President Jacob Zuma has urged the courts to block his arrest bound for Wednesday midnight. Zuma's lawyer, Dali Mpofu, told the Pietermaritzburg court that the call was justified given Zuma's precarious condition. This follows the Constitutional Court's earlier decision to sentence Zuma to 15 months in jail for failure to appear before a court. It's still not clear if the police will honor the Wednesday deadline request. The ANC has, however, distanced itself from Zuma's actions of contempt of court. Now, the Communist Party of China and World Political Parties Summit was held on Tuesday, in which China's President Xi Jinping delivered the keynote speech from Beijing. The summit was attended by more than 500 leaders of political parties and organizations from over 160 countries and over 10,000 political party representatives.
We are very proud as the African National Congress to have a strategic relationship with the Communist Party of China. We celebrate with the CPC for their centenary celebration. We are the African National Congress. We are 109 years old. We're older than the CPC, but we learn so much from the CPC, and we are filled with great admiration and praise for the manner in which the Communist Party of China has led developments in China, dealing with the issue of poverty, dealing with the issue of development. China today stands tall among the countries of the world in the way that it has led development, which has improved the lives of ordinary people and moving ahead to eradicate poverty. Now, we are also in great admiration with the way China, led by the CPC, has been able to be a very progressive player in international affairs. China is proving to be a dependable friend, and a friend that progressive nations can rely on for their own development. But also the standing of China on world issues and affairs is the type that we appreciate, and that is where we work very closely with China. In the BRICS family, we work extremely close with China, and I also work very closely with President Xi Jinping, the General Secretary of the CPC. And we are also in deep admiration of General Secretary Xi Jinping's thought of promoting socialism with Chinese characteristics. Many of the elements of his thoughts are also part of our own orientation in terms of the way we are seeking to develop our own country, in the way that we are seeking to ensure that the people of our country benefit from the developments that we are introducing as a nation. So we are very closely allied with China and the CPC, and we are very proud of that relationship.
Our party draws lessons and inspiration from the successes achieved by the Communist Party of China. We applaud how the Communist Party of China has turned around the fortunes of China to be a global leader in a vast number of socioeconomic spheres. We are confident that under the leadership of the Communist Party of China and Your Excellency President Xi Jinping, China will achieve its mission of realizing happiness and prosperity for the people of your great country, in line with the Chinese dream and ideology of socialism with Chinese characteristics. On our part, ZANU-PF is unwavering in advancing sustainable development which leaves no one behind. As such, the aspirations of our people for a better quality of life are the focus of all party and government efforts. Under the new leadership of the party's Central Committee and government, we have adopted a new development model and are endeavoring to ensure constant improvement in the quality and the impact of development policies, programs, and projects.
It was a great honor to have been invited to participate in the 100th anniversary of the CPC. I must say that the summit has been well organized with participants all around the world, and that shows the role of China now taking, I would say, a leading role on the international scene. Let me congratulate the CPC for the achievements throughout the 100 years where it has taken China into economic progress and development.
It seems to me that the President has insisted on the fact that it is necessary the concern of the cultural anchoring. Socialism cannot be established elsewhere than on a national basis. A national base means experience, it means customs, it means a certain temperament. It is by having the intelligence of all this that you can obviously build on something solid. And it is what China has achieved, which is why today it is where it is.
I listened to the speech of President Xi Jinping, who said that the economy must be Chinese style and that development must also be Chinese style. I believe this is something that is very important because China, we can see its development going in a way that is really, I don't know how to qualify it. We used to say it's in the elevator. China does not take the stairs, but takes the elevator.
This has really informed the world that South Sudan exists and South Sudan needs to be listened to. We are very thankful for this great invitation. It shows strong solidarity and friendship between China and South Sudan, and we hope this will continue as it grows more and more in development, in society, getting to know each other, in areas of politics, in the political parties' relationship, the Sudan People's Liberation Movement and the Communist Party of China will learn from each other, especially the Sudan People's Liberation Movement.
People are astonished how China managed to move from what it was. It was a member of one of the developing countries in 70s and 60s and 70s. But it has just jumped up in a very short time to become a second economy in the world. This is very astonishing, and this is what people wanted to learn, because everybody want to move also quickly to get a lesson from China. And this is, I think, it is striking everybody. They want to know how China did this. And of course, to me, I believe it is the unity of the Chinese people behind the Communist Party in promoting peace in the country and working hard day and night so that they achieve a level of development.
I'm thrilled by the inspiring speech delivered by the Secretary General of the CPC, His Excellency Xi Jinping. I find particularly the keynote speech insightful and progressive, as it highlights the strides made in bringing about the great rejuvenation of the People's Republic of China and the Chinese people under the vision and leadership of the CPC. China has undoubtedly managed to realize in the first centenary goal of building a moderately and prosperous society in all aspects of human endeavor. The attainment of the first centenary goal has positioned China on a very solid and positive trajectory of pursuing the second centenary goal of transforming China into a great modern socialist country in all aspects. And I repeat, in all aspects. Undoubtedly, with the able leadership of the CPC, this goal is likely to be attained in record time.
Now, the United Nations Children's Fund is warning that 4.5 million children in South Sudan, that's 2 out of 3 children, are in desperate need of humanitarian support. South Sudan is celebrating the 10th anniversary of the country's independence this month, but UNICEF says hopes that independence would bring a new dawn for the country's children have faded. CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports from Pibor in South Sudan.
Amotoli Ikorok is a 20-year-old mother of 2. Her husband is jobless, so the family depends on food aid. They only eat 1 meal a day. Amotoli's 2-year-old child is now malnourished and has other medical conditions. The child is now admitted to this health center run by aid agencies with support from UNICEF.
I was so worried. I thought my child would not recover. But when I brought him here, he was given treatment and now he's fine. I'm grateful to the people providing treatment here.
UNICEF says 8.3 million people in South Sudan need humanitarian support. That number is higher than the levels seen during the 2013 to 2018 civil war, when it was 7.5 million people. Relative peace is returning after the country's 2018 peace deal, but here in Pibor, home to 215,000 people, intercommunal conflict is rampant, displacing residents and pushing them to depend on humanitarian aid.
Relentless rain in the past 2 years caused flooding in this area, washing away crops and lots of livestock, causing lack of food and creating hygiene problems. As a result, many children are now malnourished. This health center with just 10 beds is the only facility for treating children who are malnourished and have medical complications in this area.
The child mortality rate in South Sudan is among the highest in the world, with 1 in 10 children not expected to reach their 5th birthday, and the situation is not getting better.
Initially, the beginning before rains were there, the flow was okay. But now with the issue of rains, patients become more, because ideally, sometimes in a week, 3 patients, 4 patients. But the last 2 weeks, every day there should be 2 patients coming.
UNICEF says more than 300,000 children, the highest number ever in the country, are expected to suffer from the worst form of malnutrition and are at risk of dying if treatment is not provided.
UNICEF is appealing to the donor community not to cut its humanitarian budget for South Sudan and its children, because if you look at it comparatively, more than ever before, the children of this youngest country of the world really needs donors to support them so that they can enjoy their rights.
For women like Amotoli Ikorok, the struggle continues to get enough food for their families. For now, Amotoli's only guarantee of getting by depends on humanitarian aid. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Pibor, South Sudan.
Elsewhere, humanitarian agencies are warning that an alarming rise in school kidnappings is disrupting the education of hundreds of thousands of Nigerian children. The United Nations Children's Agency, UNICEF, estimates that there are over 13 million children out of school across the country, which is the highest number recorded globally. CGTN's Wilkista Nyabwa now reports.
At the age of 7, Yusuf Lado has already abandoned his dream of becoming a doctor and is training to be a welder. He had not yet learned to read or write when his school closed for fear of attacks by armed gangs.
In the daytime, bandits came and attacked our village, so we ran away from the school.
The armed groups have been abducting students across northwest Nigeria as they seek ransom payouts. The increase in school kidnappings has disrupted the education of hundreds of thousands of Nigerian children. The United Nations Children's Agency, UNICEF, estimates that around 1,125 schools are closed across northwest Nigeria.
The situation in education in Nigeria is probably at its biggest crisis point at the moment. There are in the region of 13.2 million children out of school in total, which is the highest number globally.
None of Yusuf's 9 siblings is in school. The family fled their village of Kaure last year after a series of attacks by criminal gangs. Yusuf's 19-year-old cousin was taken while he was on his way to work on a farm. The family paid the kidnappers 1 million naira, equivalent to $2,400, but they still killed him. The family now lives in a house provided by a local leader on the outskirts of Kaduna City, but there are no free schools in the area that Yusuf's father considers safe enough.
I will do my best to see that my children are educated, even if it is just 2 amongst them, because I am not educated and I don't want them to be like me. I will try and put them back in primary school.
The extremist group Boko Haram, whose name translates roughly as Western education is forbidden in the local Hausa language, shocked the world when it seized more than 200 girls from the town of Chibok in 2014. The armed gangs behind the kidnappings in the northwest have no clear ideological aims, but rights group Amnesty International says they have been successful in denying children an education. The Kaduna State Education Commissioner, Shehu Usman Muhammad, says he is working to keep schools open by reinforcing security at some and relocating others. But with economic opportunities particularly limited in the north, experts say the bandits appear keen to continue abducting people for monetary gains. Wilkista Nyabwa, CGTN.
To Haiti now, where the country has declared a state of emergency after President Jovenel Moïse was killed in an assassination attack. He was shot by a group of assailants early Wednesday. Haiti's interim Prime Minister Claude Joseph confirmed the news in a statement. He did not identify the assailants but said they were Spanish-speaking. The assassination has sparked fears of widespread turmoil. The Dominican Republic has closed its border with the country. Elsewhere, media reports say the death toll in a building collapse in the U.S. state of Florida has jumped to 46. They say 10 more bodies have been discovered in the rubble. Over 100 others are still missing. The condo tower partially collapsed about 2 weeks ago. On Sunday, officials demolished the remainder of the building ahead of the approaching tropical storm Elsa. It is still unclear why the 40-year-old building collapsed. A 2018 engineering report had pointed out structural deficiencies. You're watching Africa Live. Stay with us. We'll have plenty more after this short break.
Africa is a continent of diversity. with varied climates and enchanting geography. And a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis,
Syria,
Juba, Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Let's take you to East Africa now, where in Uganda, prison authorities are sounding the alarm over rising COVID-19 infections in crowded jails. Officials say they have recorded over 100 COVID-19 cases in prisons across the country in a period of 2 weeks. CGTN's Hilary Ayesiga now reports.
Tadeo Amanyire is starting a new life after prison. He spent 7 months in jail, but he says life in prison is particularly challenging right now because of the pandemic.
The situation is not good in the wards where we sleep. It is congested. If you want to change your sleeping position, you have to seek permission from a warden.
Amanyire says without social distancing, infections are spreading fast. After regaining his freedom, Amanyire says he can now practice social distance and also wear a mask, something that was a challenge while in detention. Uganda's prison facilities are designed to accommodate 20,000 prisoners, but they are now holding up to 60,000 inmates. Prison authorities fear that the congestion in detention facilities could facilitate further spread of the virus.
In the last 2 weeks, we have had over 100 cases. And the reason is police continues to arrest. But now, this COVID has infiltrated the entire country, the countryside. So every time you find that almost every 10 people they pick about to have the COVID.
Figures from prison authorities show that they've so far registered 1,438 cases and 2 deaths. Prison authorities are now carrying out random testing of prisoners, and all visits have been suspended. And in order to decongest the detention facilities, the government is also exploring a quicker way of handling sentences.
Police should accordingly arrest and charge you with hefty fines. We are not going to arrest you and put you in jail to eat our free food. No, you will be the one to pay.
Rights activists are also urging prison authorities to ensure strict adherence to the World Health Guidelines. It is hoped that these new measures could help decongest the prisons and also contain the spread of the virus. Hilary Ayesiga, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Nearly 11,000 people in Nigeria have been infected with cholera since the start of this year alone. That's nearly 10 times higher than last year's 1,800 reported cases, adding pressure to the country's health sector that's already stretched thin trying to tackle the pandemic. Our correspondent Phil Ihaza tells us more from Abuja.
27-year-old Joy Robo manages to emerge from her shanty to take her medication for the day. For the past 2 weeks, Joy has been down with symptoms of cholera, including diarrhea, vomiting, and restlessness.
I really don't know what caused this illness, whether it's our water source or it's the environment, but I've been treating myself in a pharmacy. Some of my neighbours have suffered worse. Some have taken up to 30 drips before they recovered.
Cholera is a bacterial disease that usually spreads in contaminated water or food and can lead to death if not properly treated. Nigeria's Center for Disease Control says nearly 300 people died from cholera between January and June. Outbreaks mostly occur in rural areas where there is a lack of sanitation, hygiene, and poor access to safe drinking water. Some non-governmental organizations are now helping to teach communities hand-washing techniques, how to keep their environment clean, and to report symptoms of cholera to the hospital in time.
Imagine building your house without having a toilet. That's the household's responsibility. Equally, dumping of refuse is the household that needs to put in place proper measures. So we have youths currently working in the field, who are going from house to house and creating this awareness, especially around hand washing, ensuring that households, install hand washing facilities and clean up their toilets more often. That way, it's a behavioral issue, so it will take time before we start seeing results.
NGOs say the lockdown due to the pandemic last year has contributed to increased cholera infections reported this year.
The pandemic has actually affected the outbreak of cholera because of the open defecation practice more refuse are dumped in the open places. The water sources are not well protected. The water source, the container they use, most of them are using open bath, buckets, which is not ideal. So the germs still get into the water and contaminates the water that they consume. And that really leads to the cholera that they usually come down with.
Nigeria has had to deploy huge resources to try to combat the pandemic, which has left its healthcare system overstretched. Due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the country's health sector, experts here are calling for more hygiene exercises and information campaigns on the prevention of cholera to complement the government's efforts in tackling the disease. The NCDC has activated a National Cholera Emergency Operations Center in different parts of the country to help detect and treat cases of cholera. It's hoped that these steps will help prevent the further spread of the disease. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
Some African diplomats have praised the poverty alleviation efforts in northwest China's Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. They made the remarks at a lecture among ambassadors in Beijing. CGTN's Huang Yue reports.
Some African diplomats say China's counterterrorism efforts have led to a better life in Xinjiang, which have largely been condemned by Western countries as a violation of human rights. The remarks were made at the 9th Ambassador Lecture between the China-Africa Institute and the Xinjiang think tank of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. One diplomat says China has achieved significant progress in poverty eradication in Xinjiang, especially after 2017.
UNESCO condemns that education allows for upward socio-economic mobility for those in poverty by providing access to more skilled, higher-paying jobs. However, when it comes to China's programs in Xinjiang, which have been very, very successful, this fact is completely ignored. The Chinese central government embarked on deliberate education and empowerment education, which imparted skills to the Uyghur youths who were previously impoverished and vulnerable to radicalization.
Some African diplomats who visited Xinjiang in recent years say they've witnessed changes and developments in the region. One of them says eradicating poverty has been an important measure in the fight against terrorism and religious extremism.
What had happened in Xinjiang, I think it is a very successful way of combating extremism, because if people, the life of the people was improved and changed, they will not listen to the extremism, because the extremists, they tell the people that you are poor, so because the country, the government is not ready to help you in order to promote your life and so on. But when it happened, they were defeated. They were really defeated by having eradication of poverty.
Last November, Xinjiang announced it had bid farewell to absolute poverty, with the region's last 10 impoverished counties being removed from the list. After visiting Xinjiang, ambassadors and diplomats from various African countries say they've witnessed the peace and stability of the region, and they think the fight against poverty has greatly contributed to this. Huang Yue, CGTN, Beijing.
A giant container ship that blocked the Suez Canal for nearly a week in March has finally been released by Egyptian authorities. Officials say the ship was freed after they reached a compensation deal with its owner and insurer. The ship had blocked one of the world's busiest trading routes when it got stuck and was impounded soon after. Adel Mahroui has the details.
After being held for 107 days, the ship that blocked the Suez Canal entirely for 6 days is finally free. Since Egypt refloated the ship successfully on March 29, authorities have been holding negotiations with the Japanese owner of the Ever Given. Suez Canal officials insisted on getting compensation for the blockage, as well as the successful rescue mission which saw one Egyptian rescuer die. The Suez Canal Authority also wanted a salvation bonus for achieving that without any damage to the ship and the 18,300 containers it's carrying.
The difficulty we faced is that we wanted to make a balance between two contradicting principles. We wanted to maintain our relations with our partners, yet at the same time preserve our rights. Thank God we managed to do both. I can't tell you the figure we agreed upon, because we agreed not to disclose publicly. We managed to maintain our relations with our partners and with the countries involved.
Egypt first asked for $916 million in compensation. It then lowered the figure to $550 million, which was rejected as well. The final figure that all sides agreed on is expected to be less. The Canal Authority's chairman, Osama Rabia, says the body will get all the pledged financial payments this month. The Japanese owner has also promised to provide an additional tugboat that is to be delivered before the year ends.
The Suez Canal succeeds and thrives and will continue to succeed and thrive because of the special partnership between the Suez Canal and the vessels that use it. It is a strong, symbiotic relationship, and it is vital that that partnership is maintained and strengthened wherever possible. I am very pleased to say that over the past few weeks and months, through common sense, goodwill, and hard work, we have been able to achieve just that.
2 tugboats escorted the Ever Given from the Great Bitter Lakes, heading north. The ship is set to undergo full-body inspections at Port Said, the Egyptian canal city on the Mediterranean. The mega container ship is one of the biggest in the world. The 400-meter skyscraper-long vessel wedged and got grounded in the Suez Canal on March 23. The Ever Given is finally free. It is expected to reach Europe in 2 weeks. As a precautionary measure, the ship will be sailing at a slower speed than usual until it makes its first stop of Rotterdam in the Netherlands. There, suppliers will be receiving their goods they've been waiting more than 3 months for. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, from the southern entrance of the Suez Canal, Egypt.
And Rama Nyang is back in studio to bring us all the latest in business. Rama?
That's right, Mahia. Here's what's coming up in business news. Nigeria's parliament approves a $2.4 billion supplementary budget to fund vaccines and extra defense services. And Zimbabwe's central bank introduces into circulation its new highest denomination banknote.
Taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Over the last 14 hours of rain.
Let's start in West Africa. Nigerian legislators have approved a $2.39 billion supplementary budget that will aim to address rising insecurity in the country, but also fund COVID-19 vaccines. Lawmakers in Africa's largest oil producer also approved the external borrowing of some $6.2 billion through the issuance of a Eurobond. Nigeria emerged from a second recession since 2016 in the fourth quarter of 2020, but it's growth rate at the moment is still pretty fragile. The government expects a 2021 budget deficit of roughly $14 billion to be financed largely from a combination of foreign and domestic debt. It says it wants to moderate debt servicing costs by accessing relatively cheaper funds abroad, especially as global interest rates fall below 2020 levels while local rates start to rise. Zimbabwe's central bank has introduced a new 50 Zimbabwe dollar note and further adds that it will release an estimated $1 million into the banking sector. The new note joins the 2, 5, 10 and 20 Zimbabwean dollar notes which are already in circulation. This note is the latest and, well, by denomination, the largest in a series introduced from February 2019 as the country reinstates the use of its local currency. The release of the new notes comes at a time when Zimbabwe has just revised its year-end inflation target to 25% from a previous figure of 10%. Let's head over to South Africa. Authorities there have made an important step in efforts to regulate cryptocurrencies, having just received a set of recommendations from a government-established working group. This comes as authorities there grapple with an increase in financial scams where millions of dollars are siphoned off into crypto space, and recovering them is a pretty dangerous task. From Johannesburg, here's CGTN's Sumitra Naidu.
Illicit activity leading to large sums of money involving cryptocurrencies disappearing in recent years have forced financial state institutions and regulatory bodies to reconsider their previous approach to leaving digital currencies unregulated.
I think that we are closer than many other marketplaces are. I think the Reserve Bank was very quick off the mark, but I think that's commiserate with much of South Africa's history in that we do tend to be early adopters of regulation, for better or for worse. So some of the better things there is, of course, you have tighter capital controls and more control of your economy and more transparency and more efficacy in dealing with economic crises, for example.
A new working paper on regulating cryptocurrencies has been released and is expected to influence South Africa's next steps in dealing with digital currencies.
We agreed that banning crypto assets would not be appropriate given the propensity such action might have in driving activity underground. Then also, I think, as well reported in recent months in the South African press and even internationally. So I suppose in view of the various suspected fraud and or scam related events, particularly involving crypto assets that have made the news over the last few months, doing nothing is also not an option.
Authorities are currently looking for the founders of a Johannesburg-based crypto company after $3.6 billion of investors' money disappeared.
So that's quite a challenge that regulators have to get a balance between making sure that you're giving enough space for young things to grow, but also not allowing things to move too fast. Our Reserve Bank is looking to start cracking down on the crypto space. I think that it's perhaps in this case maybe a little too late, but going in a bit too strong.
The Intergovernmental FinTech Working Group was established in 2016 with the objective to create a forum for regulators to gain deeper insights into FinTech innovation and safeguard customers' interests.
So each individual's kind of regulator or IFWG member, there is already the conceptual agreement and buy-in that they would take forward the recommendations and implement them as it pertains to their area of responsibility.
The recommendations focus on consumer protection and how to bring crypto assets within the domestic exchange control framework. The working group says there will be a multi-speed approach to implementation over the next 6 months. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Small-scale enterprises in Uganda are angling to benefit from a share of the $1 billion loan the country's gotten from the International Monetary Fund. Experts also hope that the loan will increase domestic revenue, or at least help to increase domestic revenue, in the East African nation. Here's CGTN's Leon Senyange with this report.
Uganda's economy has been hit hard by the COVID-19 crisis, forcing huge dips in tourism, agriculture and trade. But confirmation that a 3-year financing package has been approved by the International Monetary Fund has brought optimism that the country could get back on its feet.
Because of the lockdown measures, government cannot afford to collect the domestic revenue that is collected in the past. In that sense, you need external support. And we are happy that Uganda is eligible for support, because very many countries can't borrow.
Transport restrictions, quarantine, and long lockdowns have suffocated small-scale businesses like Paul Kaziro's. He imports used items from Asia. Kaziro is holding on to hope that economic support may be offered to the business sector by the government.
You have to have a way of how coming down to us and see how they can help us as small traders, but who are fighting to see that we raise our stakes in the business that we are dealing with.
So far, about $1.2 billion has been borrowed by the Uganda government from various sources for COVID-19 interventions. According to the country's Ministry of Finance, the first disbursement of about $258 million from the IMF has already been received. But the impact of such support in dealing with economic and social strife is yet to be felt.
There have been challenges in how previous funds have been spent, but I would say that IMF has recognized this. That's why they have put the issue of governance in there. What IMF is interested in is for the Ugandan economy to go into meltdown. They want Uganda to maintain a certain level of macroeconomic stability.
Uganda continues to be squeezed by COVID-19. Last month, the country experienced its highest surge in cases, forcing a 42-day lockdown. That is already increasing the pressure on both the economy and livelihoods. Experts worry that there could be further detriments to recovery if the COVID-19 pandemic lasts longer, and that could lead to more severe social and economic problems that will require the government to rethink its recovery plans. Leon Sanyange, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Out of the continent now, the Chinese electric vehicle maker XPeng, which just wrapped up its $1.8 billion dual listing in the Hong Kong bourse, closed flat at 165 Hong Kong dollars a share on its first trading day. It's led by a former Alibaba executive, He Xiaopeng. The 7-year-old automaker is developing some smart car technologies, including a smart cabin and autonomous driving tech as well. The company says it plans to roll out a new product platform and new car models as well, targeting the global market in the next 2 years. XPeng is currently making its cars in 2 factories in China, and it's building 2 new plants. Climate-related risks may be highly non-linear, and the effects on the financial system can be very uncertain. That, at least, is a warning from the Financial Stability Board, or the FSB. In a fresh report out on Wednesday, the global bodies argue that oversees the global financial system is now suggesting that better data disclosures are needed to monitor and assess climate-related risks which threaten global financial stability. In order to standardize the data monitoring across jurisdictions, companies and sectors, the FSB is now suggesting that a global comparison and aggregation of financial firms' exposures be done. It also is calling for supporting forward-looking assessments that help capture the uncertainties and the potential tail risks that various market actors do face. Recent heat waves in the United States are taking their toll on the country's infrastructure and agriculture. The United States Department of Agriculture says nearly 180 million acres of crop-producing areas and over 15 million beef cattle farms are in a state of drought. High temperatures are also increasing the use of energy, and that puts some areas at risk of persistent rolling blackouts. The weather also does pose huge challenges on food security too. Global food prices at the moment are the highest levels in a decade. According to the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, prices went up for the 12th month in a row in the month of May, up nearly 40% year on year. In the meantime, Swiss Re Institute also warns that climate change could wipe out up to 18% of the world's GDP by 2050. All right, then I'll leave it there for the time being, but we'll be back at the top of the hour. We'll check in on that unprecedented legal drama in South Africa. The former president, Jacob Zuma, facing arrest tonight. It's unclear, though, if the South African police will execute the arrest warrant that hangs over his head ahead of a midnight deadline. Mr. Zuma's lawyers have, of course, approached the High Court to try and halt the order, with a judgment not due until 11:30 local time on Friday. We'll discuss that and plenty more at the top of the hour. See you then. For now, back to Mahia.
Rama, thank you. Well, stay with us here on Africa Live. Here's what's still to come. Belgium begins the long road to returning looted Congolese artworks.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Tanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back. Now, the Belgian government has finally said it'll begin the process of returning artifacts stolen from the Democratic Republic of Congo. The artwork is said to have been looted by Belgian explorers when the DRC was still under colonial rule. Belgian officials, however, say they will only return items that have been specifically requested by the DRC government. Here is CGTN's Wanja Mungai with more.
It is one of the treasures that the Democratic Republic of Congo will be recovering from Belgium soon. Standing tall against a wall in a museum in Taverne near Brussels, this is Nkissing Konde. It is said to have belonged to one of the Congolese kings of the Boma community that occupied the port town of the Congo River.
For too long, the Congolese people have been cut off from this inheritance, their spirituality, the work of their ancestors. These objects do not belong in any way to the Belgian people, and they must be given back and reconnected to their roots.
It all started in the 19th century under King Leopold of Belgium. During his time, scientists, explorers and soldiers are said to have stolen the artifacts. The spectacular arts of work are made of wood, ivory, with a number of them being masks, manuscripts and musical instruments.
I have no problem whatsoever to transfer the ownership to the Congolese, to whom it rightly belongs. It's a moral question.
The European country has been under pressure to return the looted objects back to the African country. Activists and intellectuals have been leading this battle.
Colonization in itself is violence, symbolic violence, physical violence. It's violence. Now we have to work out in what context the objects arrived here, and that's the work that needs to be done. It is true that there are objects where evidence shows that they were acquired through decapitation, unimagined violence. When that's directly demonstrated, there is no discussion. For the others, it is possible to study them minutely. It's not impossible. It can be done.
The Belgians, however, insist that the items will be returned back to the Democratic Republic of Congo only upon the request of the authorities there. They say officials have to ask for the specific artwork they want back. The Belgians also say the treasures number fewer than 5,000 pieces. Wanja Mungai, CGTN.
Right, and here's what's coming up in the sport. Kenya emerge overall winners of the second edition of the Africa Kabaddi Championships.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Welcome to the sport. Now, Kenya has emerged overall winners of the second edition of the Africa Kabaddi Championships. The event, which was held in Tanzania's coastal city of Dar es Salaam, saw only 3 out of the 20 countries due to participate show up due to COVID-19 logistical issues. CGTN's Daniel Kijo now reports.
The Africa Kabaddi Championship saw Kenya become the overall winner, dominating Tanzania and Egypt in both the men's and women's divisions. The tournament organizers say they expected 20 teams, but only Tanzania, Kenya and Egypt made it to match day. Simon Kibura is Kenya's team captain and one of East Africa's most experienced Kabaddi players. He says he has seen the sport grow over the last few years.
I was the first person to play Kabaddi in Africa, and today we have an African Kabaddi Championship. This shows that in a very short period of time, this sport has grown drastically.
Kabaddi is a combative team game, played on either an indoor or outdoor rectangular court, with 7 players on the ground for each side. This is the second edition of the African Kabaddi Championships. The organizers say COVID-19 not only stopped some countries from participating, but also limited the fans who could come watch the matches.
We had to allow a few people in attendance at the venue, but other fans had to watch the matches live on TV.
The Tanzanian government says it uses tournaments like these as an opportunity to market the country. Officials are calling on young people and the private sector to support the game in the country.
Leo Tanzania tunaweza kupata nafasi ya kuandaa mashindano ya Afrika.
To us, hosting is a privilege. Up to now, we have 2 Tanzanians Kabaddi professional players who play in the top Indian league. So we see this as an opportunity. Not everyone can play football, not everyone can play basketball, and not everyone can run. So for those who want to do Kabaddi, we will support them.
Kwa wanaoweza Kabaddi pia tunawapa nafasi.
Many believe Kabaddi originated in ancient India. Organizers and Kabaddi players alike believe the explosiveness of the sport they love makes it extremely television friendly. They want to keep televising and promoting Kabaddi matches. This, they hope, could educate the masses on the sport, something important for the development of African Kabaddi. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Crossing the border, the Kenyan National